Okay, so again, welcome. My name is Jennifer Brown, and I am going to teach your Cooking Basics workshop. So we have a lot more people over the past couple of months that are cooking at home. It might be that they just haven't cooked in a while because the kids have been out of the house for a long time, or it could be they are just younger and never learned, or we just have people who, I don't know how they've survived, whether it's fast food or TV dinners or different things. So we want to kind of provide some information instead of just talking about nutrition and talking about stuff about cooking. So this presentation is developed with the information from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So they actually have a PDF document that I will email you, and it's called Cooking Basics. And it kind of goes over different kitchen tools, equipment, cooking methods, spices, herbs, and also gives you some tips of just still how to be healthy, even making things on your own if you want to do some advanced prep, meal planning, if you want to do crock pots, if you want to do different kinds of things like that. So when we go into the cooking basics, we want you to have certain tools. I call them the must-have tools. Your list might be different from my list because I know that there are certain things that some people, they just have to have. And there's others that I've never owned that in my entire life. I have different tools here at my house than I do at my office. So, it depends on if I'm just cooking for my family of, 4 or 5, or if I'm cooking for, 20, 30 people at the office. But we want to go over some basic tools that we think that you need to have, and then things that are just kind of nice to have. And again, your personal list might be different, but overall, you have to start out with the basics. So having those measuring cups and spoons. We recommend, both dry and wet measuring cups. Knives. You don't have to have this huge set of knives. Basically a chef's knife and a paring knife. Some people will have multiple chef's knives, or they'll have a bread knife, a boning knife, all different kinds of things. But for the normal kitchen thing, then you just need the chef's knife, basically. You can have multiple ones, so you're not always cleaning the same one. But I have a small knife block, kind of like the one in the pictures. It might have 5 different knives. And I think there's 2 chef's knives and like 3 paring knives, because those are the ones that I use the most. Also, pots and pans. You can have a 10 to 12 inch skillet. You can get a stock pot, or even kind of a 2-quart saucepan. Again, you don't need lots of them. Now I have different sizes of skillets because I have different sizes of people in my house. So we'll have the big 12-inch skillet if I'm cooking a meal for all of us, but we have like a little one. It's probably this big that if one of the kids just wants to fry him an egg or 2. We have different size pots and pans, again, based upon if I'm cooking a big old thing of spaghetti, or if I'm just heating up a can of lima beans, okay? Cutting boards. We recommend you having 2 cutting boards at least, one for raw products and one for ready to eat. Again, I have different sizes because if I just want to cut up 1 apple, I don't need my big cutting board for that. I just need the little one. But you can get, it doesn't matter if they're glass, if they're wooden, if they're plastic, if they're the little thin pieces of plastic, those are all fine. We just want to make sure that they're cleaned properly. You're using a cutting board to cut up raw, and then using that same one immediately to cut up like ready to eat foods, so you're not cross-contaminating. One of the most important must-have tools in my kitchen, since I teach food safety, is a food thermometer. And I know it's probably something that a lot of people do not have in their kitchen, but when I'm cooking meat, the only way to know if the meat's fully cooked is to use a food thermometer. So again, I'm always stressing food safety. I recently rented a beach house for a week from a friend of mine, and it had a lot of stuff, you know, kitchenware already there. But I took a food thermometer and I took a can opener with me. Those are the two things kind of I took, because I didn't trust them to have a food thermometer, and I didn't even trust them to have a can opener. Some places I've been, they have the electric one. Well, if I lose power, that's not going to do me any good. So I always like having, and I was taking canned goods with me, so I figured I needed the can opener too. So all of the other little things that you go through your kitchen, your spatulas, your spoons, just basic stuff. You can have the whisk, the ladle, the slotted spoon. You know, you can get crazy. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Bed Bath & Beyond and stock up. But, you know, we've made these kind of Rubbermaid kits that we have in our office that I can just pull out this big bin, and it has everything that I need. And it has just very basic stuff. Some people, if you don't bake, you don't need baking dishes. Mixing bowls, they have the stainless steel ones, or they have the kind of the ones in the picture here that I have. I like getting the ones that have lids too. So I've got some Pyrex glass mixing bowls that have lids, so I can mix something up and then I put the lid on it and stick it right in the fridge. My stainless steel ones, I've got to put some aluminum foil or some saran wrap or something to cover it if I don't want anything to get in there. And I can't see what's in the bowl because it's stainless steel. I can't just open my fridge and see what's in there. I have to peek under it. And then spice rack is very important, because one of the things I'm going to talk about in the presentation is herbs and spices. So you don't have to have a fancy one. You basically just need somewhere to put some spices. It can be like a little tray. It can be one of the big racks that kind of spiral up. When I talk about my chef's knife, I want to provide people with information about, you know, cooking basics. So the chef's knife is one of the most basic knives or tools that I think that is important in my kitchen. But a lot of people don't use it right. Now, I'm not like some of the professional chefs and, you know, chopping away a mile a minute, but a lot of us just aren't gripping it correctly. So I've got pictures here to kind of show you. You hold it really close to the blade, almost even your thumb and your finger are on the metal part right there. You don't have it at the very end of the handle. You're actually close to the blade. Now you want to keep your fingers curled under when you're holding something like the carrot. You can see that in the picture on the far right there. He's got his fingers like this. So he's nowhere going to chop his fingers off because it's going straight in front of his knuckles. And then we call it the rock and chop. So the tip of that blade is never leaving the cutting board. It just kind of is always there, and you're just rocking back and forth, okay? It's never lifting it up. You're not lifting it up. You're just rocking and chopping. And it just takes practice. People, you know, when you see these professional chefs and they're going a mile a minute, it's because before they became famous, they were just a random chef in somebody's kitchen. And they were given, like, here's 10 pounds of potatoes, cut them up. It took practice. They just cut up 10 pounds of potatoes, and then they cut up 20 pounds of chicken, you know, for the dinner service. They all had to do these things. And over time, you can get faster. It's kind of like typing on the computer. You're really slow when you start out, but eventually you can get a little bit faster just with practice and making sure that you've got a good grip on it and you're watching your fingers so you're not cutting any fingers off. So when you are cutting, there are some different things when you look at different recipes. To me, the onions, a difficult one to cut up. So I will actually send you a video of how to cut up an onion, you know, with the different steps. But when you're cutting it up, when you're looking at your recipe, it'll say, I need an onion chopped. It'll say it diced, it'll say it minced or something like that. So I wanted to show you a visual of what that means, because a lot of people don't really know. They just, I'm chopping it up. They don't really know the difference. And it just gets smaller. That's all it is. It gets really, really small. You can cut up these things yourselves, or a lot of times you can buy them that way. Garlic, I'll buy it in a jar sometimes minced, because I don't want to get my garlic pressed out, or it's just easier and quicker to just buy it in a jar minced. But some of the other things, you know, it can get very difficult. So we want to give you an idea visual that, and you can see the difference, I think, between the chopped and the dice. It's just that much smaller. And then same thing with the minced. When I mentioned the food thermometer, again, food safety is something that's kind of important. I think it's a cooking basic, but it's something a lot of people are not aware of. So I'm not going to read all the numbers and the stuff to you, but again, you'll be getting this information in this PowerPoint. But the only way to truly know if your food is cooked, you know, it's not just looking, oh, the chicken's not pink anymore, or the color of the juice is run, or if you touch it and it springs back, or whatever kind of things people do to see if it's cooked. You have to do it by the temperature, because we have done a lot of food safety tests. Our scientists at NC State have, and they have tested, they'll cook burgers and they'll test the temperatures, and you've got one that looks perfect. You know, it's not no red, you know, it's not pink or, you know, any of that kind of stuff. And it actually didn't get up to temperature. It's not fully cooked. But if you look at the color of it, it is. And then we have some that'll look a little too pink. You know, if you're just looking at it, you would think it's not cooked. And we tested the temperature and it is. So there's different temperatures depending on what you're cooking. So if you're cooking, you know, something like a big, thick roast beef, you're going to have to cook it, and it's got to reach that temperature of 145 degrees, and it's got to hold that temperature for 4 minutes. So that's what the time means, is your hot foods, when it's on a buffet or something like that, it needs to be held at 135 degrees, and it needs to stay that temperature. The temperature doesn't fluctuate up and down. And poultry is the one we're most concerned about. So you have to get that up to the highest temperature, is because salmonella, it takes a little bit more heat to kill it. And no matter what, we want you to keep it out of that temperature danger zone here in this picture. So that means keeping your cold food cold and your hot foods hot, okay? So we've kind of talked about some of the must-haves, and then just briefly going over some of the nice-to-have things. So some of them might be, you know, again, you might have some things on the other list that should be here, or some things that are here that should be on the other one. I put baking dishes on the other one as well as this one, because again, if you don't bake, you don't really need a baking dish. Now, I have a baking dish, a 9x13 dish. I make lasagnas with that, but I will also cook some of my meats in the oven if I'm roasting a pork tenderloin, because it's thicker and I'm gonna put some marinade on it. So I don't want that marinade, it might be sloshing around in that pan. So I want a deeper pan. I don't want a baking sheet or something like that. Grill. A grill is very important to me. I love grilling, especially this time of year. I prefer the propane, but the coal grills are just as wonderful. You need grill utensils as well. I mean, we have spatulas and stuff like that, but if it's not the metal spatula, it could, you know, burn with that high heat on that grill. So you don't want to be ruining your utensils out there on the grill. And then you can just go down the list. We have, you know, different people make smoothies. So a blender might be good. A hand or a stand mixer. I've never in my life owned a stand mixer, but I know plenty of people that love their KitchenAid and could not live without it. I have a hand mixer, and then I grew up with actually using my hand. That was my mixer. When we were making cookies or brownies, we didn't have a mixer. We had my hand, and I was actually getting a spatula and just mixing it all together. But we've got more equipment. And the equipment is a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing too. So you don't have to have all this equipment. I have a lot of people who don't think that they can cook because they don't have all of these gadgets. And you don't have to. That's why I put it on the nice to have thing, is because I don't have half of these things. Or if I do, I have them at work, but I don't have them at my house. You can get the brand name, or you can just get the generic. So on the extra equipment list here, you know, I put a pressure cooker. That's the Instapot. You know, again, it doesn't have to be that brand name. The convection oven, a new wave oven. You know, so you might have heard of some of these names, but you don't know what the actual appliance is called. The electric grill and panini, that's the George Foreman. I like my electric skillet and my electric griddle. My girls love pancakes and breakfast stuff, so I can use that griddle a lot. But most of these other things, I don't use them. Now, when we're going back to the basics, the things that you must have, one of the things I mentioned was measuring cups. Again, we recommend different ones, the dry and the wet measuring cups, but we also want to make sure that you understand they're for different things. And I think most people know that, but not everybody has different ones. Some people only have one, and that's okay. You use what you got. But you know, if you're able to buy a wet measuring cup set and a dry one, that's what we recommend, because they're for different things. The dry ingredients, you're putting, you know, something that's dry in there, and you're measuring it by the volume or by the weight. It can be plastic, it can be metal. You can get them at the dollar store. It doesn't have to be big, expensive brand name measuring cups. You know, they come in different sizes, but you can just buy a big old set. It'll have all the spoons, all the cups together. When you're filling up those dry measuring cups, you can use, you know, a knife or even just your finger to kind of level it off there. If you put some flour in there and just level it off, it'll tell you usually in the recipe if you need brown sugar, if it needs to be packed down in there tightly. So just make sure you're following the ingredients. I have the glass measuring cup. Well, I have the liquid measuring cups, but I do not have glass because I have children and I want them to help me in the kitchen. And so, you know, I just don't want any breaking glass. So we have the plastic ones. Either the glass or the plastic are fine. You'll notice the main difference there between the two is just the liquid one has that little spout. And that's, again, to help ease, you know, pouring, because you're pouring a liquid ingredient. But they are different. Because again, the liquid is only measured by volume, and a fluid ounce is not the same as just a regular like dry ounce. They're two different things, so they're not quite interchangeable. But they'll get you in the ballpark if you only have one type of cup. I prefer the liquid ones, so I can pour it correctly. Oops, I didn't mean to turn that off. But no matter what you're doing, we want you to be as healthy as you can, because that's part of what I teach. So we have a variety of different cooking methods to master. So you got all the tools now. So now we're getting into what to do with them. And we have about the top 10 cooking methods to master. Now you will see on there, it says stir fry, but it doesn't say deep fat fry. So you know, I'm not putting that on there because, again, we're trying to get you away from what we do a lot here in the South. You know, we want to fry everything. You know, that's a good old Southern cooking. So we want you just to have a little bit healthier ways. So any of these 10 is going to be fairly healthy. My top favorite are listed there in the middle. I like to roast veggies. So I've got some roasted potatoes, a picture of some roasted potatoes. I love grilling, especially, you know, during the summer months too, because it's so hot that I don't want my oven on in my house, because then it's heating up my house. And then I have to have my air conditioner running. So to save money, I will go outside and grill, because propane is cheaper than electricity. And you can grill most everything. So in the middle picture there, I've got some London broil, and I've got some grilled asparagus. And on that same grill in a different part, I have some grilled pineapple. So you can grill fruit, veggies, and meat. Okay. And bake. You can, you know, baked cookies or desserts or stuff like that, but just lasagna. You know, I'm baking my lasagna. I once had a discussion with someone, because someone asked me, well, what's the difference between roasting and baking? And basically it's just the high heat. Roast, you put it on a higher temperature. So usually when you're roasting something, depending on what your oven or your stovetop, you know, the buttons say, is you just have a bake button. You don't have a bake and a roast and a thing. Baking and roasting are the same thing. You are turning your knob to where it says bake. But the roasting, you're going to turn the temperature up to about 425. Most things when you're baking, you know, it might be 350 or something like that. But the roasting is the high heat. And roasting, you tend to think of with those veggies. It's still the same process. You're still sticking it in the oven. You're still turning it on bake. You're just turning the temperature up, and you know, maybe for a shorter amount of time. It depends on what you're cooking. You can roast veggies, or I do roasted chicken, roast pork tenderloin. You know, all of these different things. And then stir fry. I love going out to, the Chinese or the Japanese or just different, different cultures and different flavors and stuff like that. So I want to stir fry here. So, I get some meat, get some broccoli, some mushrooms, cook some rice, and I'm just kind of making a stir fry in the big pot there. And when you get the document that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics kind of put out, it actually defines what all of these 10 mean. So you can kind of understand a little bit of the difference. I didn't want to go through and just read the definitions to you. But I just kind of wanted to talk about, there's different things. You can, I can stir fry my broccoli. I can roast my broccoli. I can put it on the grill and grill my broccoli. I can steam broccoli. So, I mean, you can take one food and cook it so many different ways that it's going to taste different. It's going to have different flavors. You can put different herbs and spices with it. If you don't, want to steam something, you can throw it in the microwave and it'll kind of do the process for you. And we boil a lot here too, because one of my children just love noodles, just plain noodles, doesn't need anything on it. So we're boiling some noodles, or we'll boil eggs, or just different kinds of things. So that's what we're doing. So as I mentioned, steaming, I want to just talk about a couple more, just a little bit more in depth. I mentioned the steaming. So you have a picture here. It's a steaming basket. You can buy one of these, and again, it's just a quick cooking method. You just have one of the pots that I mentioned, bringing water to a boil. You put, it needs to be able to fit or hold that steaming basket inside of it, and put the food in, cover tightly. If you don't have that steamer, again, you can do same kind of thing, just put it in the pan with the boiling liquid. You don't want to cover up the food completely. Cover that tightly, and it'll just, it'll steam it with all the high heat there. Or again, I tell people the grocery store has plenty of steam bag veggies that you can purchase. No matter what veggies you want, they've got the steamable bags. It's going to be more expensive to buy those, because they're kind of taking some of the work out of it for you. You just throw those in the microwave for 2 minutes and it's done. You don't have to bring a pot to boil and then put this in here and have a steamer. So it's going to cost you a little bit more if you buy the steam bag veggies. They're perfectly healthy for you. We recommend that you make sure you're buying the ones without sauces or seasoning, because they're going to have higher amounts of sodium. So get the plain, green beans, get the plain broccoli, not with the broccoli with the cheese, not the potatoes that have steak seasoning or something on it. Buy the plain ones, and you can put your own herbs and spices on it that don't include salt. As I mentioned, the stir frying, we love making kind of a bright, colorful stir fry, in a skillet or a wok, and you're just small pieces. So I will take a poorer quality cut of meat, maybe because it's a little cheaper, buy some beef tips or something. Instead of buying a steak, I'll buy some beef tips. They're usually a little bit less expensive. And I, cut up in little pieces, put a wide variety of whatever veggies I like in there. And it's kind of a one pot dish. I don't have to cook this in this pan and this in this pan and this in this pan. I can just have one pan, put kind of everything in there, maybe at differing times. If one thing's going to cook quicker than the other, but I can kind of mix it all in there with just a little bit of oil, a high heat, and you just keep stirring it. You can buy the skillet bags at the store as well in the freezer section. It might have kind of like a chicken stir fry. But again, if you're buying these things, they're going to be fairly high in sodium, because your TV dinners or those skillet meals that everything comes together is going to have a high amount of salt in that bag. Just for flavoring and for preservation and stuff like that. So what I recommend is getting the plain bag of mixed veggies. You can, again, buy some meat. You can use it if you have leftover chicken from something you cooked last night. Throw it in the pan with the mixed veggies. If you want a separate pan of rice or something like that, you can do that too. And then just mix it all together. You can kind of do it like this and make fajitas. You can make and just get the tortilla, the whole grain tortilla wraps, and put this in there, and you've got a nice like stir fry kind of taco going on there. And then baking. Again, most people think about the breads, the cakes, the pies, the cookies, you know, stuff like that, but also, you know, meatloaves, lasagnas, I mean, even if it's like breakfast casseroles, you know, a quiche, those kinds of things. I don't typically use the words baking when I talk about meat. Again, that might be my roasted pork tenderloin, but I'm sticking it in the oven and basically I'm baking it. You know, the food is being surrounded by the dry air in my oven. You can do it in the traditional oven. You can do it in a toaster oven, or as I mentioned, one of the convection ovens, like the New Wave. So there's a variety of different pieces of equipment that you can have, but a perfect normal oven is perfectly fine. And then I think the last one, I think this last type of cooking method I'm going to talk about is roasting. I love roasting vegetables. So you can see, it doesn't matter what kind of vegetables you like. Pick, you know, 4 cups of, you know, one different type, or you can mix ones together, grab some spices, and then grab some oil. That's as simple as it is. You just get a nice sheet pan. You can, again, you can do it with meats too. I'll put a roasted pork tenderloin or some chicken there, whatever, and I'll make a marinade and kind of pour it on top, or it'll have soaked in that marinade in a plastic bag in the refrigerator for, you know, 30 minutes or an hour. So it's kind of got some of the juices into the meat. But some of the recipes, you just brush the meat with a marinade, just stick it on top of that pan, stick it in the oven. Again, that high heat of 425 degrees typically. But when I do veggies, I get my baking sheet, put the veggies out, sprinkle a little olive oil. I might do it in a bowl. I might get a bowl and put the potatoes in there, then pour the olive oil in the bowl and just kind of use my hands to mix it up, put some other seasoning, the spices that it recommends, and then I will pour it onto my baking sheet and stick it in there. Sometimes I just do it all in the pan. I just go ahead and spread them out in the pan, drizzle olive oil, and then sprinkle the spices. Either one is fine. It might just depend on how much of it you're doing. If it's just for you or someone else, like a small amount, or if you got a big old pan and you really want to make sure all of it gets equally seasoned and all of it has enough olive oil. Whenever I'm roasting meats or veggies, I like getting aluminum foil and putting it down on top of my baking sheet or my pan before I put whatever it is on there, because it's easier cleanup. When I get done, you know, I scrape off all the food or whatever's on the aluminum foil, serve it up. I can just kind of grab that aluminum foil, ball it up, toss it away. And I mean, I have to do some light cleaning on my pan. The aluminum foil might have ripped a little bit. It might have stuck to it a little bit, but overall nothing's going to have been completely stuck to the pan. The marinade isn't, you know, melted onto this pan and you have to scrape and scrub. So I like using aluminum foil. It's a little cleaning trick that I do. If you're doing veggies and you're doing different types of veggies, or even if you're doing the same veggie, if you're doing something like broccoli or potatoes, you want to make sure that they're cut about the same size. You don't want like a tiny little piece of potato and then a big old thick chunk of potato, because the tiny piece is going to cook quicker than the big chunk. If you're doing, again, something very light like broccoli, like you want broccoli and potatoes, you're probably going to want to stick the potatoes in there first, because it's going to take longer for it to cook. It might take 25 minutes for the potatoes and it might take 10, 15 for the broccoli. So you're just going to have to kind of figure that out. A lot of times your recipes will tell you, and it really depends on the size that you cut it. So that's one reason I can't tell you, well, potatoes take about this amount of time. If you cut it in fourths or you cut it in eighths, that's a big difference there with your cooking time. So, but the roasting really brings out the natural flavors in the vegetables. And we had roasted okra recently. And I don't think I'd ever had okra besides it being fried okra before. And it was really good. My youngest daughter was just scooping it off of her plate, asking for more. That was the first way I'd ever had Brussels sprouts, was roasting it as well, just with a little olive oil and whatever kind of seasonings you like the best. If you're a spicy person, you know, you'll be fine with the chili powders or the curry powders or those kinds of things. And it's really just trial and error. I will give you some information about herbs and spices as we go on, about the different flavoring, what goes with each thing. But when you're doing herbs, it really doesn't matter if you do fresh herbs or dried herbs. I prefer dried herbs just because they don't ever get old. The fresh herbs, I've got to have room in my refrigerator to store them. And just like anything, if you have a fresh vegetable or fresh produce, it's only got a certain shelf life. But if I have a canned veggie, or, you know, I have a dried herb, it's going to last much, much longer. Some people think that there's a big difference in the flavors or the taste. I haven't really noticed a huge difference. But so it's a personal thing. The fresh herbs are going to cost you more as well. The only thing about dried herbs is, I mean, they can get expensive if you're getting the brand name. I get whatever store brand they have. I don't care if it's McCormick or if it's just Food Lion brand. It's an herb. It's fine either way. I try not to get the big, huge bulk containers because I don't need it for that long. It will lose it's not a food safety issue, but it will lose some of its quality if you're keeping a big old bottle of cinnamon for like 5 years. So you kind of buy what you need, and you'll figure out as you go which ones you use more than anything. But as a general rule of thumb, you're going to use 3 times as much fresh as you do dried herbs. So pay attention to your recipes. If it tells you, you know, 1 teaspoon of dried thyme, you know, or if it says 1 tablespoon of fresh thyme, they're the same thing. But you have to know if it's dried or if it's fresh, because if your recipe calls for fresh, and you're using dried, you don't need as much. You only need about 1/3 of what your recipe calls for. So pay attention. So I have the spoons up here to kind of give you that mental reminder that I only need 1 spoon of dried herb versus 3 spoons of fresh, because they're not as strong. But the dried one, it's been ground down to be finer and to, you know, just take up more space basically. So depending on what type of herb you're using as well is going to be when you add it into your recipe. So I try to follow the instructions of my recipes, but if you have a delicate herb, and I list which one of those are here, like basil or cilantro or stuff like that, it's very delicate. So you don't need to put it in at the beginning of your recipe because it's going to cook completely out. You won't taste it at all. Okay. You basically burned it up and it's gone. So those things you're going to add are just about 1 to 2 minutes before you finish cooking, or even just sprinkle on the food when you're done, kind of like a garnish, you know. So cilantro or mint or parsley is some of the ones that we think a lot about garnishes. And then you have those less delicate herbs that can be added maybe 20 minutes after, you know, when you have 20 minutes left of cooking. The oregano, the rosemary, the sage, the thyme, those kinds of things. So I'm not going to read this through, but here are some kind of food herb combos. So basil works really well with these types of foods, thyme, rosemary, and sage. So these are some of the ones that I think people use the most, or they're for a wide range of different things. So rosemary, you know, you can use it for some of your meats, but you can also use it in soups or stews or roasted potatoes. You know, the thyme, I mean, you could use it for something like eggs all the way to chicken. So there's very big differences between some of the different types of food, but you can use it for so many different things. And when I give you the handout in the email you'll receive, it gives you more specifics about some of the combos or what this herb looks like or is good for, or different things like that. But no matter what, when you're eating out or when you're cooking, we want you to think about nutrition. And that's why we want you to have the information you need to be able to cook at home, because we understand a lot of people have been eating out. Maybe not now in the past couple of months. They've been forced to stay at home and cook. But hopefully you've seen, if that's been you, is you've seen that maybe you're spending less money, at least on food. Maybe you're not, I don't know. It depends on what you're buying, I guess. But eating out typically involves the larger portions. It doesn't really fill us up more, it's just larger portions, which again leads to more calories, more fat. very few fruits and veggies, unless you're going out to an actual sit-down restaurant where they give you more options. Fewer whole grains, fewer low-fat dairy products, less fiber, and a higher cost. So we don't want you to, have health issues because you're eating poorly, or you're eating more, or you're not getting the variety that we want you to have. So we want to encourage you. You are the one in control. You are the only one that controls what food you eat. So a couple of tips and tricks that we want you to remember is measuring out those portions. So I've talked about the measuring cups. When I talk to people about nutrition, I'm telling them, don't just use your measuring cups for when you're making the recipe. Use your measuring cups when you're serving the recipe. So my recipe will say, this makes 8 1-cup servings. I will go and get the serving cup and actually serve people either in my home or at work when I'm teaching a workshop out of that measuring cup. It helps me, it helps us stick to our portions, but it also helps me make sure that I don't run out of food. If I'm feeding a group of people, I've made just enough servings. And, if you get heavy-handed, what I think is a serving, you might think is a helping, and vice versa. So if we get heavy-handed handing out our food, we're going to run out of food. I'm sure you've all been somewhere, some event, some program, some workshop, for work or somewhere throughout your life, and they've run out of food. And it's one of the most horrible things if you're in charge of that event is running out of food. So I want to measure out portions so I know that my family's going to have enough to eat. I want to measure out portions so if I'm planning on leftovers, I actually have leftovers. So I'm making sure I'm not wasting my money because I gave everyone way too much food. And if your family's like some of my children, oh, I'm full and I can't eat that. And we don't want to mix all the leftovers back in a container. I want them to eat what they want to, what I serve them. So I don't want to overserve them because then they're cleaning their plates, or I'm fussing at them that they didn't finish their dinner, or they're giving the scraps to the dogs, and we're wasting food. I also encourage people to serve the food on the plates instead of just bringing the serving dishes to the tables. So I don't want them to have everybody can just reach over and grab for seconds, because again, they're going to be eating more portions than they should be, which is going to cost you more as well. It's going to cost you more because you're getting bigger because you're eating too much food. So get the plates out, put the servings on there, and leave the serving dishes, the pots and the pans up on the stove, or go ahead and put the leftovers in the fridge, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. You can package snacks or other things into individual servings. It's cheaper if I buy even if it's like potato chips, if I buy a big old bag of potato chips, then buy the individual servings of potato chip bags. But my children are going to overeat if I just give them, here's the bag, go sit in there and eat a snack while you watch TV. Half of that bag will be gone. So I will buy that bag and I will go ahead and put them in Ziploc baggies if I need to. Here's your snack for the day. This is your snack. When you finish this bag, that's it, no more. Because with my kids at home all day, a lot of parents are finding out their kids are just eating them out of house and home. Because every hour, I want a snack, I want a snack. They don't eat this much at school. I don't know why they need to eat this much at home. But it's here, and they're here, and they're hungry. And I know a lot of other adults are doing that too. We're overeating because we're just sitting at home with nothing to do, watching TV, might as well eat. So trying to make sure we're staying away from that. Using smaller plates and glasses, instead of the big platters, we have a normal size plate. I actually have different variety of plates. To me, that's a must-have as well, because I have different size people. So I've got the little side dish plates, the little side bowls, the medium plates, and then the platters. If I'm bringing all the food to the table, that's what I get a big old plate out for. And no matter what, reading the nutrition labels. You can't know how much a serving is unless you read the package of, whatever is you're serving. So if you're buying those steam bag veggies, looking on the back of it and say, okay, this is 4 servings. Well, this will serve me and my family of 4, or this will serve me and my husband, and we'll have another, we'll have leftovers, you know, a whole nother meal for each of us left over. So it'll save you money in the long run. So I've kind of told you what you needed to have in your kitchen with regards to the items, the kitchen equipment. But I also want to remind you of things to keep in stock for the actual cooking. September is also, not only is it Food Awareness, Safety Awareness Month, but it is Disaster Preparedness Month. And that's one of the things that we talk about as well with Cooperative Extension, is making sure people are prepared for whatever disaster hits, whether it's, you know, we had Hurricane Laura recently. We had an earthquake not too far from us about a month ago or so. So we're getting into that time where there's a lot of natural disasters, as well as it won't be long before winter is here and we have snow and inclement weather, and we might have power outages or even thunderstorms that cause power outages. So things that I think you need to keep in stock is, you know, canned goods. You know, whether it's fruit, veggies, meat, whatever kind of meat you like, and then pasta, rice, soup, these things. These were very difficult to find at the beginning of all of this stuff with coronavirus. So making sure that you kind of keep some of this stuff on hand normally is important. I'm always sitting here, oh, what do I want for dinner? And then, okay, we'll get this and we'll get this. And you go in your cabinet and you're like, oh my God, I don't have this ingredient. Like, how am I going to make spaghetti if I don't have spaghetti sauce, or if I'm out of pasta or stuff? So I try to have a good rule of thumb that whenever I pull the last box of pasta out, it's going on my grocery list. So, you know, within the next couple of days, I'm gonna go buy pasta. Same thing with spaghetti sauce or just whatever else. I mentioned herbs and spices. So I try to keep my herbs and spices fairly stocked well. And my husband does a lot of cooking and he likes a lot of spices as well. So he uses more than even I do. But we have the different oils. We recommend olive oil or vegetable oil. I don't use I'm not a spicy person, so I don't use the pepper too much, but you know, he does. And we've got definitely more than 3 or 4 spices because we cook a variety of food. So if you're just cooking chicken or you're just cooking beef or something like that, I'll mention some of the herbs and spices that we recommend you having, because spices for fish are a little bit different. You know, you might use the Old Bay or the Creole seasoning or the lemon pepper seasoning or something like that. I don't typically use those for the meat, the chicken, or the pork that I cook. And then of course, don't forget the stuff in your fridge, but I tend to let those things not stock up because again, I'm just always afraid that I'm going to lose power. And those refrigerated items aren't going to do me any good because I'm not going to keep going in the refrigerator to get them. I want to keep my refrigerator closed as much as I possibly can. But I do also have a deep freeze too. So I will have meats and fishes and different things like that. But I tend to rely on my canned goods for disasters and stuff like that. So if you were thinking about getting ahead of the game, you're thinking about doing some cooking or preparing for cooking, doing some meal prep, is, you know, first things first, pick what you want to prep. Just like you have to pick what items you need in your kitchen. What are your must-haves? You need to pick what you want to prep. Then take stock, go through your pantries. It's about time for me to go back through my pantries and pull stuff out and throw stuff away, donate stuff to the food pantry if I bought too much of something, and you know, also make my grocery list. What am I missing? And I try to have a written plan. You know, I get my favorite recipes out. If you're just starting doing, you know, some meal prep or whatever, don't try to, like, I'm going to prep the whole week, figure out what I'm going to have for the whole week. Just pick a day, you know, maybe 2 meals or something like that. I'm going to meal plan Monday and Wednesday. Just start simple there and come up with, you know, an actual written plan. I try to use my more perishable ingredients first, so my refrigerated stuff. So if I go to the grocery store, I'm gonna buy fresh, frozen, and canned of, say, veggies. I'm gonna use my fresh stuff first because that's gonna go bad quickest. And then from there, I can pick frozen or cans. I can go back and forth. Either one of them is going to last just as long as the other one. It might depend on my space. I might not have as much freezer space as I do pantry space, or vice versa. So you can kind of pick from there. You can also use what we call component cooking. So you have one component that you're going to cook, and you're going to use that for multiple meals. So it could be, I've got chicken, you know, I've got bulk chicken. I'm going to cook that, and we're going to have roasted chicken tonight. And then tomorrow I'm going to pick off, you know, the chicken off the bone, and I'm going to throw that in some chicken fajitas. So both nights I only had to cook the chicken once. We call it cooking once, eating twice. So that's something to think about. It might be that I cooked more chicken, you know, instead of just 1 pound of chicken, I went ahead and cooked 2 pounds of chicken. So I'm only having to heat up my oven or my grill or whatever it is one time. That's going to save me electricity. And it's also going to save me time, because I only had to cook the chicken one time, but I've got 2 meals for it. So you need to think about that. You don't want to cook the chicken for, say, Tuesday night meal, and you cooked, you know, extra chicken, and then you don't eat that extra chicken until Friday. It's not going to taste as good. So you want to kind of do it back-to-back nights. You don't want to skip too many days if that's possible. You can also use what we call batch cooking, where you double the recipe and you freeze half. So it could be like a soup or a stew, or even, I'll do this with lasagna, honestly, or some kind of a casserole. Instead of a 9x13 pan, I will cook my lasagna in 2 8x8 pans. So I've made my, you know, I've browned my meat, I've got my spaghetti sauce, and I'm just layering it in my lasagna pan. Instead of a 9x13, I get 2 pans out, and I go ahead and layer it and put it, you know, basically together. And I put one in the freezer, and I cook one now. Okay, so I'll do that sometimes as well. I've mentioned marinating if you're cooking different meats. There's different marinades. These are just some of the ones that work best with that type of meat, some of the ingredients. But the point of a marinade is you've got an acid of some kind, you've got an oil, and you've got some kind of seasonings, and it just helps add flavor. You can use a glass bowl and, you know, put your meats or whatever in there and pour the marinade on top, and just stick that in the fridge, and it's just sitting in the bowl. You can get a plastic, like Ziploc sealable bag, put the meats in there with the marinade. You can, you know, mix it all around a little bit, stick it in there, and every 30 minutes or an hour, pick it back out and shake it up, flip it over. So it's getting all of the marinade all over the sides of it. Depending on what you're cooking, it's how long your marinade, you need to marinate it. So if you're doing something usually like salmon, or something, you know, thinner, more delicate like fish, you might only need to marinate it for 30 minutes. Some of the other stuff, it's the longer you can marinate it, the better. You know, it's really going to get the marinade and the flavor in there if you can do it, you know, even overnight or something like that. But usually if you're like me, I didn't think about it that far ahead, because I don't always meal plan like I need to. Like I know I have different meals. I'm just not sure which one I'm going to do tonight. So I haven't marinated. And then it's like 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, ooh, what are we going to have for dinner? So I'll marinate it for 30 minutes. And then when you're done, you want to discard that marinade. Okay. When we say that, again, it's a food safety thing about it, because if you have that marinade in a bag of raw meat, okay, then whatever salmonella, E. coli, whatever might be on that raw meat before you cooked it is in the marinade. So you don't want to cook the chicken and then use that same marinade as kind of a sauce on top. You discard that marinade if you want to make a second marinade, or if you, when you make the marinade recipe, you make it and you put half in the bag and you reserve the other half of the marinade for later. And then in addition, I also make my own salad dressings. So I like making my own marinade because it's cheaper to me to make it than it is to buy a bottle of marinade that I have to find a space in my refrigerator for. Same thing with dressing. You know, I probably have like 6 bottles of dressing in my refrigerator because everybody likes something different. And we don't have maybe salads that often that it could take me a year before I get through a bottle of dressing sometimes, or clean out my refrigerator, or they expire before I've used it all. So I'll make my own dressing, and I can just make a little bit of it. I can make what I need. Same kind of thing with your marinades. you're going to have an acid, an oil, and then whatever kind of herbs or seasoning you want to it. So if I'm going to make like a balsamic vinaigrette, then obviously I'm going to have the balsamic vinegar. But if I'm going to make kind of like a citrus, thing, I might use the lemon juice. So I'm going to send you some different recipes as well, but these are basically the things that you can choose from for the different flavors for your salad dressings and for your marinades. You can buy them, it's perfectly fine. Again, sometimes when you're buying marinades or even dressings, you're buying a bottle of salt. They're very high in sodium. So this way I can make my own and I don't put salt in it. It doesn't have salt or flavoring in there. When I'm sitting down to look at recipes, I've got my marinades or I've got my other stuff, I'm looking for some new recipes. I don't want the same meals over and over again. Now, if you're just starting out and you really are just, I want the very basics about cooking, then you might just start with, these are the 5 meals. Every Monday, I'm going to have this. Every Tuesday, I'm going to have this. And if that's probably gotten to be a little bit boring and you want to spice it up a little bit, I've got some different websites that we recommend for different healthy recipe finders. So just going to the choosemyplate.gov, as I mentioned, the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, that's eatright.org, that's their website. If you have a chronic illness such as diabetes or heart disease, they have their own website, the American Diabetes Association, diabetes.org, heart.org. And then the one at the bottom is my Facebook page. It's facebook.com/PersonGranvilleFCS. So that is that's the website that you can find every day at about 3 p.m. I put a new recipe up. So I'm trying to give different recipes, whether it's for breakfast, whether it's for different things, but these are some good sites to Google and find new recipes. And when you're looking through those recipes, or if you have a cookbook, like I said, if you want to have an Instapot or a crock pot or something like that, they have so many different cookbooks out there, but you need to be able to determine if it's a healthy recipe. So does it follow the My Plate? Is half of the plate fruits and veggies? Is there whole grains in your meal? Do you have a lean protein? Are you using one of the healthier cooking methods we talked about? Are you paying attention to your portion control? Watching, just anytime you can take a recipe and, make it low in salt, fat, or sugar. It might need to be that you tweak the recipe a little bit. Is there anything I can reduce in this recipe? Do I need that much sugar? Can I eliminate it? Do I need whipped topping, on this? Can I substitute it with something else? Instead of so much salt, can I grab some other herbs and spices and put some different seasonings in my recipes? So it'll just give you, it's kind of a trial and error thing. You need to find out what meals you like and which ones that your family likes too. Because if you don't like it, you're not going to keep eating it. And you're eventually just going to give up with trying to cook. Whenever I give recipes, I try to keep them very basic as well, because I know that there's a wide variety of people and their skill sets. So that's why I'll tell people, roast some veggies. It can't get any easier than cut it up, put it on a pan, drizzle some oil, turn the oven on. Or the steam bag veggies, or open a can of veggies. It doesn't have to be very difficult. They have rice, the little instant ready rice that, again, it's just a little bag. You throw it in the microwave, cook it for 2 minutes, and it's steamed, it's boiled your rice for you, and it's good to go. Have some rice and steamed veggies and cook a piece of meat, bake or roast a pork tenderloin. You can buy the pork tenderloin that already are in a bag of marinade. I try not to do that because they cost a little bit more. And again, they're going to be higher in salt. But if that gets you from, instead of, if you can do that instead of going out to eat, it's still going to be a heck of a lot healthier for you than going out to eat, because it could be better portions. It's cooked in a healthier cooking method. It might have a little bit more extra salt, but it's not going to be saltier than what you'd find out at a restaurant. So hopefully this is kind of giving you some information about just cooking basics. Hopefully I didn't bore you to death. I didn't want to keep it too simple, but I wanted to give some information about the different spectrums. So making sure you've got what you need in your house and then going from there. You might already have all the kitchen equipment you need, but you might not know about the herbs and spices. So when I send you the email with the information, check that section out. And if you ever need more information, you're going to have my email address. You can just pop an email back and I'm really interested more about herbs and spices, or I'm really interested more about the different cooking methods. I have different workshops that I teach on a variety of topics. I might have already taught a workshop in the past couple of months on this topic, and I could send you the presentation. My next workshop is going to be in 2 weeks from today. It's going to be on cooking for 1 or 2. So again, we've talked about just the basics of cooking. Some people are going from being a house of 4 or 5 or 6 people to now it's just them, or it's just them and a spouse. You got that empty nest thing going on, or whatever. And you might just need information of how to reduce the sizes of your meals, because I often hear a lot of older people that are, I don't want to cook just for me, or even people my age that don't have kids or don't have a family. I don't bother cooking. I don't need to do all that work for just me. You're important. Your health is important. And eating is something you have to do 3 times a day, hopefully. So we want to make sure we give you that information that you can cook for just you and someone else. And it doesn't have to be this big, huge display of food with 3 courses. So don't forget, again, you can always reply to my email if you have any questions. I'm going to unmute everybody to see if they do have any questions. I don't see anything in the chat that anyone has, that anyone has asked anyone. Okay. So if you want to unmute and ask a question, please feel free. If not, when I send the email out, I will have the registration link for my next workshop. You can always go to our Facebook page or our Twitter page and get information, recipes, or feel free to ask any questions. Do any of you have any questions? I appreciate you all coming and paying attention to the lesson. And hopefully I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Enjoyed the
Okay.
lesson.
Okay. I'll just stay on for just for
Enjoy
another
the
minute.
session.
Anybody?
Have a good week.
You too. You too. Hopefully everybody had a good, I'm going to say Memorial Day, Labor Day. And you're at home for a couple of months, you lose what day it is.
Amen.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.